Okay, so when it comes to the rendering behind the line drawing in Illustrator, as I mentioned before, you need to be able to save the perspective or the axonometric. If it's the isometric, it's fine. You can go to the northeast, do the make to the, and then do the rendering from the same view. I'm going to do this hopefully 2 times if hopefully the rendering process works. So let's imagine I'm using isometric here. I use that view and I do a make 2D. This we have talked about many times of the view. I go to the top view very fast and I export that drawing as obviously Illustrator. I can call it ISO project A or whatever it is. And I go to Illustrator where I can open the file. Okay. Let me take a look at the rulers. I believe they're actually 10 by 10, which is something we have organized already previously. If not, remember you have to start a new file in Illustrator and place your guidelines. In theory, I'm hoping that all of you have the different drawings in Illustrator started to be organized around a set of guidelines. If not, just remember to do that because it's quite important. You need to bring all 5 documents here or drawings and then start bringing guidelines that you save in a layer so you can afterwards commit to those guidelines precisely, okay? I'll Control C that. But let's imagine this is actually the axonometric and it's the main drawing you want to deal with, and I'll do it afterwards with a perspective. We definitely need to fix the line weight for both the hidden lines and the visible lines, but I'm gonna keep it right there for now. In the most important drawing of all of the ones that you're dealing with, you need to bring a rendering behind that has color. For that, we need to go back to Rhino and understand a little bit the renderings. We need to go to the exact same view, whether it's perspective or isometric, whatever it is, and start actually doing renderings. By the way, if you zoom out, it's the same view if it's parallel, not if it's perspective, but if it's parallel view. Standard, all of the rendering settings are under the blue sphere. Right click. And these are the settings right here. You can dock them in or you can just leave them in a separate window as you see fit. You can set the render to be V-Ray or Rhino, but we're going to work on this first panel only in Rhino, and most probably you don't have V-Ray anyway, so just leave it there. You definitely want to say the current viewport, which is that's the one you want to do. You want to place your 3D file or your model in the center and nicely allocated and in the view you want. And you want to change some of these settings carefully. Okay. We're going to keep it very diagrammatic. So we want to keep like a very simple type of rendering. To do test, I would recommend that you do a very small, like a 640/4080. This is very low resolution, but it could be okay to start seeing the rendering. And then what you can do is take it to the 1000 or even the 2000 here after you're happy with the result. Okay. Other things that you can set, when you're going to print, this DPI should be all the way to 300. But if you're doing testing, you should take it down to 72. And if it's something medium size, it's like a 150. Okay, so probably your final render should be 300. But because otherwise my computer's not going to work properly, I'm going to set it to 72. And then draft quality, you get the sense of how you should be testing. You should be testing in draft and then taking it to final. Again, the higher the number here, the more pixels you have, higher the number there, the density of pixels as well, and the quality, the higher, the better. Now, the better means the longer time rendering, as you can imagine. Something that is important to change here is the background color. Right now it's set to white. But what we're going to do is transparent background and uncheck ground plane. So when we render, there's no little shadow around. It's going to be like a rendering floating in a transparent background. So those are important to check. And then here, if you have the chance to say studio, depending on the software you have, you might have it or not, or you might have even other options. This is good. It gives a bit better quality to your rendering and more interesting lighting effects. You can set a sun or skylight. I normally keep these things as they are, normally skylight with the same environment that is called. And in general, the rest stays as it is as the default. Now, let's render it is. Remember that the quality is very low. To render, you click on the blue sphere. Now, normally, it should take almost no time. So even while I'm sharing and recording, it was fast. So this should have been probably immediately, no? So things that come to my mind that, well, the resolution is horrible, and maybe the materiality. This is where you start thinking of the color code of your final panel. How do we change that? We need to assign a material to the project. That means that we need to first know, and I'm going to clean the layers by purging everything. You don't have to do that. But my project is here in the base project, which I probably should have renamed as project A as well, or whatever, no? Or project B, or I think it's project B, sorry. Okay, the box, as I mentioned in the past, the color of the box is only how you see it in the interface, so it does not affect how you're rendering it. But the circle to the right, the material option, does involve how it renders. So you have to think what color, what material you want to use, and assign that material to your object, to the layer of your object. So I'm going to go to the circle, click. I would recommend to try different standard options. They're quite good, such as glass or gem, and try different colors. Maybe paint and try a strong color like in red, because you have your lines in red or whatever it is. That gives you some reflections. You know, you can say okay and test how that looks by clicking on the blue sphere again. And notice how you already start getting some interesting reflections, much more interesting as a rendering overall. No, we're not looking to realistic renderings. Obviously, this is again all about diagrams and generating very fast diagrams that can explain a project from the outside, as if we were Superman floating above the city and looking down at the building or the space. No, that type of diagram that explains at one glance the project. No, this is something I think it's very powerful that you show oftentimes in your studio projects, some kind of a little diagram that explains the project before you jump into really detailing the project. No, so notice how the resolution is very bad. Those are the pixels. They're not allowing us to see this properly. So let's say I like that color and that material. I can now set this to a higher rendering resolution, to higher DPI, again 300. I'm going to place it 150 for now, and to good. You can go a little bit higher, and you're going to render with a blue sphere. Here, things are going to start going slower, obviously. And imagine I'm dealing with still low, medium resolution, but in your case, this one should come out quite nicely. Notice how the background of the rendering is black. That is good. we don't want a background. And that is achieved through the boxes that I checked, the one that it says transparent background and do not place a floor, I think it was, or let me see what it was. We can take a look afterwards. A ground, I think it is. Okay, that's still pixelated, but much better at the scale. I see the shiny qualities. Again, you can change color of the paint, but you can give also a glass. I think with this very simple diagrammatic rendering, you can have a little bit of fun and start color coding each project differently. And maybe why not? The material you're using relates to the color that you're implementing, but it might relate to the title. Maybe you're titling something a water flow, and then it's like more of a kind of a transparent watery thing in blue colors or whatever it is. Okay. So let's say you're
color, like in InDesign for the section perspective with the.
Good point. There's a point where I give freedom to do whatever you think is best. I would always ask consistency throughout the projects. Officially, the official line says that the most important document of the 5 has a rendering associated. And the section perspective has color, as I say, but is normally assigned to the part that is being sectioned. Okay. If you want to add a rendering, I think it will look fantastic, but that will be like an additional strategy. I'm not really.
No, I mean like
requiring that. Sorry.
The maybe that you answer this, but like the section perspective has its own color to identify that. But then this rendering, does it have to match that color? Like this rendering on this one, does it have to match that section or no?
I would recommend it does.
Okay, yeah.
There's some consistency throughout the project, but maybe it doesn't consistently throughout all of the projects. Maybe all of the sections are pure colors, and then all of the renderings are shiny, whatever, opposite, you know, so maybe you use blue and red, and then the other ones. So whatever it is, when we see the 6 projects, we need to identify each project as an identity, as a single identity. And that's easily achieved through the same color, for example, no? But there are many other techniques. If you want to try them and test them, feel free. Okay, so again, I render this. You might take it even to a higher resolution. The step here is important that you need to save this. Normally, you will save JPEGs if you want a very fast rendering, but in our case, what we're going to do is render it as a PNG, portable network graphic. The reason is that it keeps the transparency layer, and you won't have a background. Okay, we will call this project, I think I'm dealing with B, and then rendering, PNG. And if I go now to Illustrator, I can do a file place. It's very similar to how you would place an image in InDesign. You can say place and select the PNG file that you created. Notice how it's transparent in the background, so the lines are seen through whatever is, I guess, no geometry, which is fantastic. And there are a couple of steps that you need to follow before you say mission accomplished. Number 1, in the layers, you might want to create a new layer and call it image. And select the image and drag the little square to the image box. Once you have done that, you can drag the layer of the image underneath the line drawings, so it is behind the lines. And finally, what a pity, the scale of the rendering is not the same as the scale of the line drawings. Pain in the ass, you need to scale the image until it matches the line. And this is going to be a little bit of trial error. It might take a little bit the first time, but then it will be quite simple, I'm quite sure. So you click on the corner, you press shift to make sure you constrain proportions slightly and slowly until it matches precisely the line drawing. You can use the arrows a little bit, and I'm happy. If you zoom in, notice how I don't see here some of the pixels out. Good. Nice looking drawing. Again, I didn't fix the line weights and so on, but I could do it right now. I have to take the hidden lines layer underneath the visible. I need to select the visible. Maybe you're using colors or not. That's up to you. I'll make it a little thinner. The visible line in black, for example. Again, you can use whatever you prefer as a color and line identity. And then I'm going to select the hidden layer and make it definitely thinner. Smaller dashes, such as 3 and 3. And a little lighter sometimes works. Deselect. And this is a sharp, nice looking, crispy, wonderful, we're all happy type of diagram. This has to happen to all of the projects, no? So you selected the isometric or whatever other drawing and you do the same, okay? I'm gonna do it very fast for the perspective as well. So that will be a second time doing this. I'm not going to record that because it's going to be the same, but you can have a sense that in the perspective, the only difference that instead of going to the isometric northwest, I will need to save the perspective first and both make to the end render from the exact same view. Okay,